My name's Peter Roden, and I'm the Associate Director for Technology at the Center for Financial Literacy at Boston College. And I started about a month ago, and my background is I'm an MIT engineer, so I have a different perspective on all this. And I'm going to talk about some of the technical considerations you should look at when you're building a financial literacy website. And these are pretty generic websites. The other thing I want to say is if you want to see more of that great interactive video, come over to booth 5. It's playing live there. We'd love to have you come and tell us what works and doesn't work. So please do that. So the first thing is, from our perspective, is that web learning is really a combination of visual design and user experience, building on what Chris said. So you can have your dull experience that we've all seen, the 1996 version, or through our work with Genuine, you can see something compelling like this.
Or saved up, and a lifestyle that's much easier to sustain through your retirement years. A second thing you could do is work longer. Most people today retire around 62, but if you are healthy and can work to 70, to claim your highest Social Security benefit, you could double the monthly income you'll get for the rest of your life from Social Security and retirement savings.
So those are certainly a much more compelling way to teach than the old. The other thing that we need to consider is that we need a trusted website. So what that means from a technical point of view is that it's available. We want to make sure that when you go to the site, you don't get a 404, it's not there. So it needs to, from a performance perspective, it needs to work. It needs to be reliable. The information, when a calculator comes back with an answer, it needs to be the right answer, not just some guess at the answer. It needs to be responsive. I mean, how many times have we sat there and watched the little things spin, et cetera? Grant you, everybody's particular connections and computers, et cetera, create different sets of circumstances. But in general, our goal is to make sure that it's responsive as possible for the largest group of people. And as I said, it needs to be very accurate. The other thing that people don't want to think about, but I need to think about, is the security of this thing, especially if you're starting to keep any personal private information. So confidentiality, there's sort of 5 or 6 things that one thinks about in general when one thinks about security on a website. That the information that you're getting is not given to anybody else without permission. That while the information is going from point A to point B on the internet, that nothing happens to that information along the way. So whether it's SSL, the little lock in the corner, or the other techniques, that when you go to a host, it is actually the host you thought you were going to, and not some spoofed host along the way. And that you have the permission to get to that information, that you have the authorization to look at that information. Oh, I went too quickly there. Excuse me while I... And then the other thing is that from an auditing point of view, you can go back and look at the transactions that were in there so that nobody can say that one of the transactions was lost along the way or that it wasn't their transaction. So you need to think about those 5 factors. It takes a lot of extra time in terms of delivering your website, but the upside to that is when there is a security crisis, you'll have done all the right things to protect yourself. So you want to think about it because it costs time to market to put security in. But when you have a security breach, you really wish you had spent the time doing that. So the other thing I want to talk about is scale. And so there's a very famous, very famous thing called the Mythical Man Month, which you can read there. And this was a gentleman named Fred Brooks, and he was in charge of building the IBM 360 operating system. It took 9 years. And he was told to hurry the process up. And his response was, well, if one woman can produce a baby in 9 months, then 9 women should be able to produce a baby in 1 month. We know that's not possible. So when you think about scale, the thing we want to think about is that you want the site to be able to continue to function well as it's changed in size or volume. So as you add more users or more content, the performance, reliability, accuracy, and availability don't change. And the other thing that you want to do is that as the situation changes with more people using the system, that the system is able to adapt to that change in a very seamless way to provide more functionality. So that's how you build it. So, another thing that's very important is the need for architecture. Is anybody here familiar with the Winchester Mystery House? Let me tell you a little bit about the Winchester Mystery House. It was built by the granddaughter of the person who owns Winchester Rifles. And it took 38 years of construction. There are 147 builders involved, 9 architects. It has 160 rooms, 40 bedrooms, 6 kitchens, 2 basements, 950 doors, 65 doors to blank walls, 13 abandoned staircases, and 34 skylights in the floor. The point is, there was no blueprint to this building. And so if you build a website without doing any basic engineering architecture, you'll end up with a beautiful building that is really hard to maintain, hard to build on, and sort of an anomaly, I'll put it that way. So we want to think about some kind of architecture, and I'm not going to go through the details here, but this is sort of how, at a very, very high level, a technical person would think about the architecture that would go into that. The other piece that I want to talk about, which is very important in terms of scale and how we're thinking of doing our work at the Center for Financial Literacy, is a Lego block architecture. So rather than just going off and building a standalone site, we want to think about the fact that we're going to define the interface between these blocks, like calculation results and calculation results as the outputs and the user entered data as the inputs. And then we're going to define different components that can work with those interfaces, like a calculation engine or some kind of audio explanation. And then you're going to wire those things together, rapidly assemble those components into product. So then you get something where you have some audio start time, there's an audio explanation, the end time, which feeds the graphic slide bar, which has user entered data to the engine and goes back to the slide bar. So by building components like that, you can then wire together different solutions. And that's sort of the way a technical person thinks about how to scale this thing, so that as a new treatment comes along, as folks like Bridget come up with a new way that we want to go about approaching this thing, we'll be able to bring stuff to market and test it and understand, did this work properly, and adapt in a very flexible way to the world. So, very high level, the Good Financial Literacy website is compelling. You trust it. It's secure. It's scalable, and it's modular. Thank you.